So just a quick introduction. Jordana, just because you're at the top of my page, she's BCBA, started working at BeyondAutism after graduating with a psychology degree, having worked on home programs for the year before that. You've been with BeyondAutism for 6 years, starting as a tutor, progressing to class leader, supervisor, and now head of sixth form. Graduated from Bangor University and became a BCBA in 2018, also a staff governor. Working at BeyondAutism, Jordana has gained experience with a variety of different programs and loves seeing the pupils have fun whilst learning new skills each day. Hallelujah. Alongside her is Emma. Emma is a head of Tram School and has over 15 years experience working in educational settings with pupils from wide-ranging backgrounds. Emma started her career as a qualified English teacher and worked for a number of years as a teacher, a head of year in a mainstream secondary, trained as a qualified SENCO in 2018, is currently undertaking a master's in inclusive education. So another highly educated expert in the field. Emma believes all pupils should have access to the best education available and wants to see all pupils achieve their utmost potential within their educational setting. Which segues nicely, I think, to how that can happen. And again, I suppose in a way, thinking about what is the setting events, what is the thing that enables growth, thriving, stability for people in their education settings. And so Emma and Jordana are going to be talking about how well-being and choice build independence. So this will be another CEU event, guys, so look out for the keywords. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy, and don't forget the questions and comments in the chat section. Thanks. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Andy, for that introduction. What wasn't mentioned is that Emma and Jordana are currently in the middle of Ofsted, so bear with us as we navigate our way through talking about wellbeing and the work that we've done on wellbeing quite systematically through the Wellbeing Award Scheme for our school, Tram House, to embed a culture that we are proud to say, help me out, Jordana. Proud to have an open dialogue, yes, around mental health and wellbeing, especially. So we're predominantly going to talk through how we went about achieving the Wellbeing Award for Tram House School, and one of the big pieces of work that we had to do in order to be successful in achieving the award was create a robust strategy. So one of the first places we researched and looked into was the Mental Health Foundation. And we use their definition of mental health as a starting point for creating a strategy around a positive sense of well-being, which enables an individual to be able to function in society, meet the demands of everyday life. We became very aware that through the research that we were doing of the disparity between people in good mental health versus those that were struggling with their mental health, and the role that resilience and the recovery process from an illness changes a person's outcomes. So why did we engage in the Wellbeing Award Scheme for schools? I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the next slide, but in our research, so Jordana and I started the Pupil Mental Health group back in 2018, and we've been working with a dedicated cohort of staff who wanted to promote positive mental health within our pupils. We saw it as a big gap for our school. We saw it as an opportunity to encourage a dialogue that hadn't been had before when we were Rainbow School and now Tram House and Park House School. So we encountered the Wellbeing Award for Schools, and it looked like a fantastic award in order for us to be able to change and develop the long-term culture of the school, and hopefully Ofsted are seeing that. We've already had a little bit of feedback to say they are seeing that, so that is good. And also to put mental health and wellbeing right at the heart of our school life, which I think in the feedback report that we had, the adjudicator of the award said that we demonstrated that very effectively.
Thank you, Emma. So just thinking about, I suppose, the importance of wellbeing, and I think from a behaviour analyst perspective as well, being able to operationally define what wellbeing is and what mental health is quite difficult. It's not something that can necessarily be observed. How people are feeling, how they might engage with others at those difficult points in their life can be a challenge in terms of kind of measuring. So I think that was a challenge to start with in terms of from a behaviour analyst perspective. One way we've overcome it is around looking at the topographies and looking at specific behaviours that we see. So from our pupils, from our staff, and from our parents as well, and being able to recognise those behaviours and then kind of support and put strategies in place to support wellbeing across our whole community. So kind of looking here for our pupils, obviously we recognise that for our pupils, being able to express and being able to communicate how they're feeling or their own well-being is a barrier for most of our pupils. So we saw a real benefit in being able to teach these skills, being able to express how they're feeling, and then selecting a strategy so they could become more like self-manage their own behaviours that potentially could challenge, and take more ownership, I suppose, in terms of them looking after their own well-being. Similarly for staff, it's our school can be quite a demanding situation, setting. So as well as their own physical health, where we have first aiders, it's important to also have mental health first aiders as well, which is something we've implemented. So we have a number of mental health first aiders to support staff across the organisation. And we recognise that mental health does have an impact on a staff member being able to work. So that's why we thought it was important to consider. And similarly for our parents, they have a difficult time, and we're here as a support network, I suppose. We want to be part of a community where everyone feels supported and engaged, and being able to express their views and be listened to, but also supporting them to be resilient themselves as well. So taking on the Wellbeing Award allowed us to consider all of these points.
Okay, so in terms of practicalities with the Wellbeing Award, what we had to demonstrate, I want to say moderator, is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
The judge.
Yes.
What we had to demonstrate was that we could achieve the 8 outcomes which are on your screen as we speak, and they ranged from the school being committed to promoting and protecting emotional well-being and mental health, right through to working with other partnerships with other schools and external stakeholders, and forming relationships with CCGs, for example, and had everything in between. We're going to now talk through, hopefully succinctly, how we were able to achieve the 8 outcomes, what work we did in order to be successful, but also upon reflection, how it has impacted our school for the better, and how we've been able to move the dialogue and the agenda around mental health forward for our pupils, for our staff, and hopefully for our parents as well. So Jordan is going to start by talking through objective 1.
Okay, so I suppose objective 1 is about collating what we already had. It involved an evaluation and putting together an action plan about what we did, what was going well, and I suppose what areas we needed to improve. So I've put a reference here to BCBA standard in terms of making those data-based decisions. So before we started anything, we had the data that we needed to see what we were doing already and what areas we needed to improve. I think this was a vital and very important stage of the overall award. I think it was very reflective that we did do a lot already, but there were areas that we could definitely improve and develop further. So in terms of like the evaluation, it covered a range of different professionals. It was staff. We gained feedback from pupils. So we adapted some of the awards questions so our pupils could access and with support answer those questions. It was a challenge, which I'll talk about a bit later. But yes, to the best of their abilities, they were able to answer the questions, and again some feedback from parents as well. We took all of those responses, and then, like I said, we made our action plan in terms of what we were going to do going forward. So just considering some of our strengths and difficulties. So like I said, the whole school was aware by this point what was involved as part of the award. We had done lots of introductions to what the award was and what we were planning to do in terms of wellbeing and mental health moving forward. When you mentioned about the pupil feedback forms, we adapted these with communication in print symbols, so they had more of an understanding in terms of the questions and trying to gain as much feedback from pupils as possible. And then I suppose it was a case of termly or regular discussions with our team, which has developed and expanded over the course of the 18 months to 2 years now, when we started the award. And I think as Emma was saying, the kind of culture around mental health and wellbeing, people are more open to talking about it now. And I think that's reflected in people wanting to join our team and to support others and support our pupils as well. So initially, we had difficulties engaging the whole school community. And I think anyone looking to start anything like this may find the same. People are defensive. People don't necessarily want to talk about their well-being or mental health. And it's, for us, it was about just trying to create that culture step by step. It did take some time to get everyone kind of engaging with us. But yeah, keep going, guys. You can you can get through it. It's worth it, definitely. So in terms of our impact the award had, so at each point we had to put in a success criteria, so something that we can measure what we were aiming for, I suppose, in terms of our data. Where do we want to be? How do we know that a skill or what we've done has been mastered, for example? So this is our success criteria, and I feel that we met the criteria in terms of the whole of Tram House School being aware of their own and others' mental health and wellbeing. As I said, a culture is being created at the school where people are more open to talk about their mental health and their own wellbeing, and supporting our parents and our pupils to do the same. We continue to have our dedicated wellbeing team that meet regularly to promote wellbeing. We have lots of different events which we can talk about a bit later in terms of what we're actually doing day to day. And our staff feedback. Yes, so we did an initial staff feedback, and then we've also re-evaluated. So we asked for further feedback at a later point, and from that we saw the true impact, where staff feedback was very positive in terms of all the things we've been putting in place.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on there and say that was probably one of the most insightful parts of the process, actually, in terms of knowing our understanding the work that we were doing was actually having an impact. It was those evaluation forms. In January, when we first sent out the evaluation form, staff were quite critical. They did feel that their own mental health wasn't considered, that it wasn't a factor, that senior leaders perhaps, you know, weren't supporting them as well as we could do. And the information that we then gathered from the September evaluation forms was much more positive. Hopefully, as the Ofsted inspector who's here at the moment speaks to our staff and asks them about whether their wellbeing is important, hopefully those judgments will come through that you know, we very much are invested in people. I would argue that our retention rate has improved since doing this wellbeing award as a result of working our way through this. People are keen to stay. People enjoy working at Tram House. Not that they didn't used to, but it's definitely had an impact on staff's opinions of working at Tram House. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through objective 2 and what we did in terms of achieving this standard, if you like. So objective 2 was around the vision and strategy for promoting and protecting emotional wellbeing and mental health, and how it was then communicated to all stakeholders. So I'm not going to lie when I say that this was the biggest piece of work that we undertook in terms of putting together a really robust strategy. And if anyone's interested in reading the 13-page document that we wrote, it is available on our website. One of the things that we put in place prior to the full strategy was a clear vision statement. I believe that's coming up on the next slide, and that was something that we shared quite quickly with the whole school community, and made it very visible on the website. We then carried out a SWOT analysis, again based on staff feedback, but also through our own reflections, through the team, the change team that we created around us, and we evaluated where there were opportunities to improve our provision, our mental health provision, and also like COVID was a massive threat at the time of putting all of this in place. So how we were overcoming the detrimental effects that COVID-19 had on many people's mental health, pupils, parents, staff alike, and how we were putting together as a community to safeguard people's mental health during such a difficult time. We, as part of the process, audited the safeguarding policies, so anti-bullying. We do have a mental health. We already had a policy for promoting positive mental health for our pupils, but we audited that just to make sure that it was fully robust, and said what we wanted to capture, and what we wanted to encapsulate moving forwards for the school. Jordana's spoken a little bit already about how we garnered input from the whole school community. It was a struggle at first. We tried many strategies, probably made people very uncomfortable. We sat in the staff room, we asked people directly for feedback. We asked people to come and speak to us one-to-one. We asked for emails, people to engage with us after training sessions, and slowly but surely people did start to engage with us, but it was a process that we had to go through, like Jordana has already said, and I think it was only through like the voice of the minority where we then garnered enthusiasm for the voice of the majority. And I think we're now in a place where people do feel comfortable coming to talk to us. I know that I, as a mental health first aider, do meet people and they want to come and talk to me. They feel comfortable coming to talk to me. So I think that's significantly moved on. And then in terms of our pupils, as a school, we felt that we had very robust risk assessments for our pupils, behaviours that challenge, for like community risks, for example, internet risks. But what we felt was missing was actually we need to safeguard our pupils' emotional mental health risks as well. So we added emotional risk factors into every pupil's risk assessment. So if you are a parent and you're on this chat, then you'll have noticed that that is an addition to the risk assessments that we made. So just a little bit more about creating our vision. I've spoken already about the voice of the staff. We also, at the same time as receiving staff evaluations, we took feedback from parents as well. Response rates were quite low at first from parents, but then in the September evaluations, we did get more parents responding to the questionnaire that we sent out. And as Joanna's already said, we garnered as much pupil voice as we possibly could through adapted response forms, pupil voice forms. And then our vision emerged. So it was to develop strategies to engage with the whole school community, including parents and carers, staff and pupils, to create a shared vision of collective responsibility for mental health, and to have a platform that keeps developing and refining tools of communication and accountability for our community's mental health and wellbeing. And for us, and by us I mean Jordana and I, the idea that this is the endpoint for our school is definitely not where we're at. We know that there continues to be more that we can do. We are aware that there are more resources that could be available to our pupils. There are frameworks that we could tap into. We know there's still room for progress, and that for us is really important as the leaders of the school to demonstrate to the wider school that we know this is not the end point, and we know that and we're committed to making progress. So what continues to go well for us? All staff have commit to the vision statement of the school. We do have a very clear understanding of the school's strengths and what needs improving. And like we've already spoken about, the results from the staff evaluations at September were really positive. What we would like to develop is even further parental involvement and parental involvement in the development of the school strategy, because we still felt like it was only the voice of the few that we heard from, and it would be nice to be able to open that door of communication for all parents to feel that they could approach us and talk to us about the things that we could put in place to support their child further, for example. So what impact have we seen from this objective? Well, there is a clear strategy in place. Since the verification, we've developed that strategy even further. We now have a 5-year plan for where we'd like to take mental health for both staff and pupils for Tram House. All staff have a wellness action plan, which is a proactive strategy rather than being a reactive strategy to mental health and wellbeing. So it's something that staff complete on enrolment to the school, and it helps their line manager just pinpoint triggers of stress or challenge for those individuals in order to safeguard their mental health a little bit better. We've worked really hard to embed zones of regulation throughout the school, and the specialist speech and language therapists and occupational therapists have really supported us there. We had members of SALT and OT on our change team, and they supported this implementation throughout the Pupils Day to promote the independence and choice that we're looking for, and also to support in developing more cohesive strategies for our students if they are identifying as being in the blue zone, or they are identifying as being in the yellow zone, or even red zone, as I observed in a lesson the other day. That's not the end of the conversation. Actually, that's the start of the conversation, and it is, how can we support you while you are feeling angry, or while you are feeling silly, or while you are feeling tired, and as Joanna and I can empathise with. And then the last impact, I guess, is that staff, including line managers, are, I think there's like been a heightened awareness of what support is available for staff, school staff in particular within the school, and those resources. So our EAP assistants, our CBT therapist, they are engaged with regularly. Our mental health first aiders are engaged with. You know, they're very much part and parcel of a debrief should there have been a behaviour incident, and staff need additional support in working in working their way through that that incident. So that's the impact of objective 2.
So moving into objective 3, this was around the responsibility for all, having ownership and kind of creating that positive culture. So kind of things that we achieve, and you can kind of see some nice quotes here from our staff evaluation form as well. So we have developed a planner of training. So we have every half term, we have some form of wellbeing or mental health training, whether that's pupil or that's staff training, for the pupils or for the staff. And I think we've seen a big impact in terms of staff being more aware and having more knowledge around what, you know, the importance of emotional wellbeing, and how they can support our stakeholders to you know, be positively mentally healthy. So we gained feedback from staff and pupils, as we've said, which supported to create our strategy. And then we also put together an accountability framework. So this clearly showed who was responsible kind of throughout the different levels of leadership. And, you know, as mental health first aiders ourselves, we're not counsellors, we're not trained counsellors. We do have a counsellor that we work with, and it was, I suppose, setting those almost boundaries for the staff, especially the line managers, in terms of where their support started and where it ended. So I think that was a key kind of document that we put together. And I suppose the whole purpose of creating that positive culture is to try and reduce that stigma around mental health and wellbeing. And as we've kind of spoken about initially, when we first introduced the idea of talking more openly about mental health and wellbeing, there was some kind of hold back, I suppose, from staff. And as we've kind of moved through the award and through our kind of over the last couple of years, we've definitely seen that stigmatism kind of reduce for sure. Yes, thank you. So again, so strengths and difficulties. So what continues to go well? We have a range of resources to support staff with their emotional wellbeing. As I've mentioned, we have our counsellor. Our staff have regular half-termly meetings with their line manager, which has a set focus section on kind of wellbeing and how they're supporting or what support they might need. We have support plans for any staff member that may be struggling with their mental health and wellbeing and needs that additional support at work. It includes things like what are the risks and what triggers it, any difficulties, and what we can do as an organisation to support those individuals. We continue to work as an NDT, promoting wellbeing across the whole school. So from our behaviour analysts, our wellbeing champions in each class that work directly with our pupils, our speech and language and OT professionals, all the way up to kind of our senior leadership team. We're all very much engaging with wellbeing and mental health and see it as a priority for our organisation and our school. As we've mentioned already, initially the contributions from staff being more open to develop the strategy was a challenge, which we looked to overcome. So the impact of our awards. So as we've said, with our wellbeing award from our wellness support plans, we've tried to shift it from being a reactive to a proactive kind of strategies that we need to use. So being able to, rather than a consequence to a behaviour, we're looking at all those antecedents and making sure that we're putting interventions in place prior to any behaviours that or any topographies that we may observe. We know from data, it's confidential, but we know that our counsellor is well utilised. I think we get data in terms of how often sessions are taken up, and they are regularly used. So it's one of our ex-staff members came back and is supporting us as a CBT professional. So he is our counsellor currently. And then also our zones of regulation displays. So each class has a designated display throughout the school. It's used throughout the school day at multiple opportunities, through registration to following a behaviour incident, through to group sessions. It's, as Emma said, it's that initial conversation, that how are you feeling? Okay, you're feeling sad. What are we going to do about it? How can we support you? How can you support yourself to I suppose improve your mood and to continue with your day as best as you can.
Okay. So objective 4 was around the school actively promoting staff emotional wellbeing and mental health. There's lots of things that we've already spoken about that we've done, but one of the core aspects of the strategy was to divide that the support that staff receive into the core offer that all staff receive, targeted support, and then the specialist offer, and that was mirrored also in the pupil support as well in terms of mental health. I don't want to repeat everything that's already been said, but we introduced in September a Golden Star of the Week for staff members that have gone above and beyond for our pupils, and each week we have many staff who are nominated for that, which is just wonderful, and it's colleagues really celebrating colleagues' work that they do with our pupils. In November we had a thankful turkey in the reception area of Tram House, where again, it's a simple idea, but really engage pupils, yes, and staff in thinking about what they're thankful for, and the turkey grew across the space of the week, and it was a really just simple but lovely activity. We've also introduced monthly wellbeing sessions. So this month's wellbeing session is guided breathing / mindfulness. Last month it was soap making. And moving on into the summer term, we've got a quiz planned and a sports day planned for staff as well to end the year. So, and I think those monthly wellbeing activities have really enhanced staff realizing how much they are appreciated for the work that they do, and they are well attended by a cross section of staff, tutors, middle leaders. Senior leaders are always a little bit hesitant to attend because we don't want to rain on people's parade, but maybe we need to overcome that and attend. We also ensured that the allocated budget was in place in order for us to access further external training. So yesterday, one of our mental health first aiders attended a course on staff burnout, and he's already shared lots of strategies and ideas to the mental health first aid team at Tram House around additional things that we can be doing. So we'll be looking at that moving forward. we also want to have wellbeing special events for the pupils as well. So next week, although we're a little bit behind in terms of the rest of the nation, we will be spending a week celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week with a range of activities and sessions planned for the pupils. So what's continuing? Sorry, should I just go back?
Yeah.
Sorry. So we've already spoken about the range of resources. We've spoken a little bit about staff being more open and honest. That is also evident when staff are now asking post-incident for a mental health first aider. So they're not just attending to their physical needs, but they are actually attending to their mental health needs as well. And that was something that we were very keen as leaders to instill in the school community, because when behaviours that challenge are at crisis, they are very difficult emotionally as well as physically for people to manage. We've done specific line management training as well on how to support staff through mental health crises or lows or disclosures. So they've had a bespoke package in order to support their teams. And we've received positive feedback from the wellness action plans. The majority of the staff filled them in, shared them with their line managers, and that proactivity is again something that we wish to keep going and continue. The one thing that we were really struggling with in autumn term, but which isn't such an issue at the moment, touch wood, is staff absence having an impact on staff morale, because in August, when COVID was still very much live and kicking, as I know it still is now, but very much on the forefront of everyone's mind, and isolation periods were long, staff absence did have a massive impact on staff morale in autumn term, and we really felt like the package of support that we had put in place needed to improve even further, because it wasn't sufficient to combat the fact that on some days 10 members of staff were absent, 15 members of staff were absent, because those autumn days were very challenging for our staff team. So again, the impact. We've spoken about wellness action plans. We've spoken about the impact then that has on line managers and being able to actively support their team. And staff feedback from evaluation shows us the impact on how supported staff feel. So we've got a nice quote here: "My supervisor tells us to be completely honest when she asks how our day has been or how we felt during an incident of behaviours that challenge with a pupil," which demonstrates to us the impact that, or like the strides that we've taken to create the positive culture with regards to emotional well-being within the school.
So moving into objective 5, which is around prioritising professional learning and development within the school. And I think a key kind of point was for staff to be confident in what they were delivering, I suppose, to our pupils in terms of all their lessons that were running around teaching about emotions, and how they could best support our pupils with their emotional well-being. And yeah, we have a nice quote here that we talk about it a lot, and we are provided with training and meetings about it. So as I've said already, we've highlighted key special events and training within our kind of school planner. And we also have a budget in terms of developing further our knowledge. So I wouldn't say that, as we said, we know everything. We definitely don't. It's a continuous learning opportunity, and it's about going on those external trainings. What was it? Clicked onto the next slide. Next slide. So looking at our strengths and difficulties. So we continually have our training, as we've already said, and a large proportion of our mental health team have a level 2 certificate in understanding mental health, first aid and mental health. in the workplace. And as Emma mentioned, our team continuously goes on training events to develop our knowledge so we can kind of share our knowledge with others within the organisation in our school. Kind of, I suppose, what we would like to develop further is linking up with other schools and linking up with other professionals so we can share our knowledge with each other. So we're very keen on sharing, as we are today, what we've done and what we've achieved at our school, but also very keen to see what other schools have done so we can work together for the best of our pupils. So looking at our impact, so staff regularly receive training throughout the year, which has an impact in terms of what they're delivering day to day in terms of their teaching and supporting our pupils and their families. We have developed a pupil concern form. So if a pupil has a concern, we felt that, especially for our learners that are non-vocal, it was quite difficult for them to express if they had a concern. So we've developed a form which is pupil friendly and to the best that we can. It's something that we're continuously working on, that they can express and say that they are worried, and we're looking into why they're worried and what we can do to support them moving forward as well. As we've said already, we have our risk assessments for our pupils, emotional wellbeing, and these are regularly reviewed by the class team and the MDT team around the pupil. So for example, COVID, it impacted everyone's lives, and this was added as an emotional risk factor for our pupils in terms of the impact that it had on their well-being. And alongside that, it has strategies that we're using individual to the pupil to support them through any changes that may be happening. And yeah, we've got 9 mental health first aid champions across the school at different levels. So we have kind of a multi-stage kind of team. We have our mental health first aid champions, which work directly with the pupils. Typically our kind of lead tutors within the classes have volunteered for this role, and they are responsible for setting up different activities during the week to promote well-being and to trial different things with our pupils to see what they enjoy, what helps calm them. And then we have our mental health first aiders for our staff, which our staff use regularly to get some guidance and support with their well-being. And then we have our dedicated pupil mental health team and our dedicated staff team as well. So it's a big team.
Okay, so objective 6 was around the school understanding the different types of emotional and mental health needs across the school and ensuring that we have systems in place to respond appropriately. There's not a lot within this section that is new that we haven't already covered in the talk already, except for the school website. We developed the mental health and wellbeing section quite robustly during this process, and the school website has a range of links to services and support and local information services for pupils. It's particularly targeted towards signposting for parents that you want to use our website for that purpose. Just to highlight as well the close work that we do with local authorities and consultations with them during annual reviews and local authority meetings to support the long-term mental health. Like I see Jane has put a comment about the long-term impacts on Johnny and their family life, and it's about having those discussions early with local authorities and with families to ensure that a package of support is maintained. So I think that's something that the school does well. I'm going to just move on to an example. We've spoken a lot about the emotional risk factors. Here's an anonymised version of what that might look like for our pupils. You can see that at the bottom there, the pandemic was added to all of our pupils' risk assessments. And again, regarding strengths and difficulties, we've spoken about this quite thoroughly already, but in terms of continuing to develop, not all of our staff are maybe open to talk about their mental health needs and their well-being in their one-to-ones, so which is understandable. So it's how do we reach those staff and give them and give them a voice. So I know that a lot of work's been done through the induction in terms of every new starter having a buddy system, but it doesn't stop at a new starter. I feel like staff need a bit of a buddy system throughout their time in the organisation, and it's rolling that out. And again, like bringing it back to our pupils, which is why fundamentally we did what we did. They have difficulties communicating their emotions, and it's often difficult to know how they feel and what support may be best for them because of the barriers that our pupils face. Them sitting down and telling us that they had a bad night's sleep, it doesn't happen so it's about the bespoke knowledge and information gathering that we have on our pupils and the work that we do with the families that supports that aspect of supporting our pupils moving forwards. And the impact of this section, so staff have received group and individual training on how to use zones of regulation through our specialist consultant OTs. Staff regularly report concerns by using our child protection online monitoring system, and both DSLs and DSPs work with class teams to support pupils. Our MDT meetings continue to occur regularly, and if there are any particular concerns about an individual pupil, they will use those meetings as an opportunity to discuss pupils' mental health and wellbeing as well.
So objective 7, actively seeking ongoing participation in the whole school community. And I think we've discussed this quite at length already in terms of our kind of journey, I suppose, with discussions around mental health and wellbeing and how initially it was a struggle, and as we've spoke about it more, people and staff and parents have been more open and more receptive to expressing their views. And I think some of these points here just kind of clarify that really. So in terms of our engagement and things that we've achieved to be able to engage our staff and our pupils and our parents. So they are actively involved within our school community. Here are just some examples of some of the strategies that we've put in place. So as part of our homeschool communication book, we have a part where staff or the pupils themselves would indicate how they're feeling, which I think is really valuable for parents moving coming home, knowing how their child's day has been and how they've been feeling. I think that's a very beneficial section within the home communication book. Also some feeling check-ins, as we mentioned, so it's not just about what zone are you in, it's about what strategies you're going to use, and pupils accessing that as part of their group lessons and choosing a strategy following a certain feeling and they may be feeling. We have a section within our staff briefing which covers different scenarios around mental health and wellbeing. So this is an example on the slide here with some examples of what you might do in that situation, and that kind of best prepares our staff in terms of knowing what to do, and kind of exposes them to lots of new situations that they may come across in the future. Our strengths and difficulties. I think a lot of this we've covered, but I think the main point from the slide is we're trialing new ways to get parents involved. As we've said, it has been something that we're looking to develop. We've had multiple coffee mornings where parents have given feedback in terms of what we can do to support, and one of the things that we put in place is our mobile texting service, so parents can message and text any things that they might like, and vice versa, the school can also message parents through a text message service. So the impact that this has had has been developing our strategy with the whole school community, as we've said. The valuation forms, I think that was a valuable opportunity for us, especially because they were anonymous. I think staff were and parents were more open in terms of discussing any points for development that they may want to consider, and we had some positive feedback in terms of them being and continuously being anonymous. So that's something that we're continuously doing.
Okay, and the last objective, it was the most challenging to achieve, to be honest. It was around the school working in partnership with other schools and agencies and available specialist service to support emotional wellbeing and mental health. And the reason why that was difficult was at the time of working our way through the mental health and wellbeing. We were in the middle of a pandemic where collaboration with other services was very difficult. We did manage to meet that objective, however, by the fact that we attend termly ABA in schools forums. We work with our sister school, who are also working towards this wellbeing award scheme. And one of the biggest successes, and one of the things that the auditor, judge, adjudicator, whatever you want to call her, said was she was really impressed that we managed to get onto a CCG. So they are monthly meetings that we are able to attend now in the Wandsworth area. So in terms of moving forwards, we would love to join a local commissioning group that has knowledge of pupils of autism, because the one that we're part of is more of a generic thinking group rather than a autism specialist CCG. And again, now we're sort of past COVID restrictions, looking again at how we can move collaboration with other ABA schools forwards, and looking at ways to engage with other schools to gain best practice. And I'm just going to skip to the overall impact of the award. So this is just a summary, really, of how the award helped us to achieve our wellbeing culture. So the lady was very complimentary about our commitment to improving and being reflective practitioners. And that is purely because we're very dedicated to wanting to equip ourselves to support our learners and our staff and our parents as best that we can. We want staff to feel more confident around talking about mental health stigma, to remove the stigma, and encouraging the number of staff wanting to be involved at all levels with mental health, and really implementing a very rigorous training package to mitigate against any weaknesses or areas for development that potentially we've identified as part of the SWOT. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. I don't know if there are any questions. Here's Andy.
Hi guys. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate also you taking time out from what I know has been a hectic couple of days. So thank you. Maybe this is light relief. I'm not sure.
It is actually.
You'd be pleased to know, I don't know if you've cottoned on, there's been many comments in the background on your talk. And so I'm just going to take us through a few of those, and there are also some questions. In the interest of time, we'll stop now, but I think there are any other questions that come along, then please do have them and we'll forward them on to Jordana and Emma. Okay, so in terms of comments, Jane talks about really valued the focus on families too in the wellbeing work, too often ignored. We hope to keep Johnny at home with us until we hop into our graves. Gosh, it's got a bit dark. But the corollary of that is that as we become little old people, is that he has to be happy and independent around his own self-care as possible. What else should we go for here? So it's so important to support staff has come through a few times. It's a rewarding job, but not always an easy one. And working with high support needs and often complex behaviours and learning disabilities can be something that's draining and also part of this environment. And I think that's one of the things that has really come through for me. I know you referenced the aspects of the task list that you pulled out in terms of the objectivity and the measurement and so on. But it really spoke to me around environments and actually the ecological aspects of it, to sort of speak in more kind of PBS-based terms, that you're thinking about everything and how that then seats. I mean, I also took the objectivity from your defining areas. You're defining kind of the 1 to 8 and how that afforded you the measurement and in a way setting the event for better outcomes for the pupils. Sarah talks about, this is fantastic. Have you also implemented this across the post-19 education or just schools? You mentioned Park House having a site of this, and I believe post-19 are also interested.
Yes, I believe they are. I think they're developing their mental health team across the post-19 services. So, but yes, I think they're very keen to also consider taking part in this award.
We had mental health teams in place first, and then we went for the award because it was important that we had an invested staff team that were going to be committed to the work that we were going to do, and it was a long process. It took us a year to achieve and to gather the evidence that was required and to put the necessary steps in place. So if anyone was thinking about doing that, that is the first step I would suggest that you take, having those.
Yeah, I think some of that's coming through. So it seems like it's been reflected really favourably from people. Sophie wondered how, explain a little bit more about the mental health first aiders. What training have they had and what role will they take in the school?
Sure. So I think we mentioned it in one of the slides. It's the Cachet level 2 course that the mental health first aiders have done. So what was it called again? Understanding mental health in the workplace.
Yes,
and the role that they take is so they are available daily. So should a behavioural incident or an out of school incident have occurred in a staff member's day, they can seek support from the mental health first aider. The mental health first aiders have like a debrief script, so a step-by-step guide on how to engage with those staff members that have come to them. They're readily available. Like we were saying, like one of our priorities was making sure that staff were not just physically supported, but were mentally supported as well through challenging days.
So that,
you never heard me talk so much.
You got that unilateral relationship. So you kind of got mental health on both sides. Both have a way to kind of flag or identify. And one of the questions that's come through, there have been a lot of comments. So I'm just trying to make it make sense based on what you said before. So I was just talking about really wanting to get involved and having an offline conversation if possible. There's a conversation about, or here asked a question directly, is can you share what emotional regulation strategies or exercises were effective with no or minimally verbal children with disabilities? Did you have to make modifications and what were those? Jordana, do you want to speak to that in brief? Because I know we had that conversation around emotional regulation. I wonder whether that's where you seated it in from a search framework point of view.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's in terms of like strategies that we implemented, we work quite closely with the OT and the therapists to look at I suppose the topography of the behaviour that the pupils were presenting with, and it is all very individualised. So what works for one pupil might not work for another. I think a lot of this stuff I covered in my podcast as well, in terms of what strategies I put in place for individual pupils. So definitely, if you're interested for more information, have a listen to that. It's got some like resources that I've used on there. But yeah, it was. It's difficult in terms of like pinpointing certain strategies that we use, but things like breathing, things like folding your hands and counting. So kind of like those routine things that might be part of a pupil's RAG or behaviour plan. It was about them becoming more self-managing and utilising those strategies for themselves rather than being adult-led, if that makes sense. So anything we found that helped calm or relax our pupils.
Even asking for alone time, it seems like such a simple strategy for ourselves perhaps, but actually for our pupils, it takes, it's a process of education to teach them that that's an okay strategy. It's perfectly reasonable for teenagers to have some time by themselves. So, and that obviously then helps parents as well, because they can generalize that to home. So yeah, sorry, I don't know.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay.
Well, no, it's interesting to me because it's one of those things that I know we debated this whole idea around whether this would be a CEU or not, and listening to you talk, you are talking about things that wouldn't ordinarily fall under the remit of behaviour analysis, right? Like the emotional aspects. I know we cover this a lot in the podcast, but you did mention really early on about the things that can be observed and the measurement selections that you can take, and what is it you're trying to measure. And it struck me you have this combination rather between the single case aspect, which is how does a certain child navigate a certain situation and what skills and repertoires can he teach, and then the outcome of that, which presumably might be, I guess, for one of it's a bit of a clumsy example, but the reduction in behaviours not perceived to challenge. I mean, that seems a bit lazy, but you know what I mean? Like there's something that can be seen as different. Through to what also is under this kind of umbrella, which is acceptance, commitment therapy to a certain degree. Like how does somebody self-regulate in that given moment, given certain environmental stimuli, and then what's the outcome of that? So I think it's a really valuable challenge to the field in that regard. Okay, guys, we could, I know, given the response that we've had online, and also given how interesting this is, talk more. I think the main things that have come back from the audience have been, it's amazing that staff are getting that type of input. And there was a question around evaluating key themes from exit interviews around, did that reflect staff burnout or other things? So perhaps that's something that could be followed up later. That came from Maria. Questions around conceptual guidance, which I think we've at least given the first seed for, in kind of referencing the podcast and looking at the references that we had on that. So Sophie talks about what she's going to take back to her setting, which is fantastic news. And yeah, so thank you so much for your time. You can pretend you're in there a little bit longer if you like.
We will.
Take some time to breathe, and I'll see you guys soon. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.